to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, we are going to talk about the real process of returning to your kink after someone has used it to harm you. This is going to be a heavy topic today. We're going to cover a lot of ground, just because everything's involved, but we're not going to get into actual specific types of abuse, but I'm going to cover all of that here in a little bit. And as always, I want to thank all of my listeners. You really are the ones who I'm showing up for week in, week out. All of the new ones that are coming in, all of you have been here since the beginning. It's been a wonderful 4 years. I just want to say thank you for being here. And if you haven't already, please do me a favor, rate the show. If you follow it on Spotify, hit the 5 stars, subscribe, follow it wherever you listen. This helps more people find these conversations. And if you want to support the work that I do, there is a donation link in the show's description. That way you can help me keep these conversations going. Now, today's topic isn't about flipping a switch or even going back to how things were. Abuse inside of the lifestyle changes how we see trust, touch, and even ourselves. It can actually leave you questioning what's safe, what's yours, and whether you can ever let go again without bracing for that impact. And today we really are going to talk about that slow rebuild, the fear, the hesitation, the steps going back towards safety and choice, and how to do it all without losing the parts of yourself that still want to feel, and even play and connect to that erotic identity of yours. And make sure you stick around until the end, because I'm introducing a brand new segment to the show, and I think you all will appreciate it. All right, so now let's get into it. First, I want to name the impact of abuse in kink. So when we talk about abuse in kink, it's important to understand that it's not the same thing as abuse in a purely vanilla relationship. It's not more or less damaging at all, but it is different in how it plays out and how it's actually felt. If we understand that the lifestyle is built on our trust, definitely power exchange, consent, and communications, those aren't side elements. They are the foundation to what we do. And when someone uses that foundation to harm you, they're not just breaking trust in them as a person, they're twisting the very meaning of the thing that you kept safe, that brought you to the lifestyle. And abuse in kink can take on a lot of different forms: emotional manipulation, consent violations, physical harm, neglect of agreed boundaries. But for today's conversation, we're going to look at what comes after. The focus is on the impact and the process of reclaiming what was taken from you. That's what makes this so different. In a healthy dynamic, consent is the safeguard, the safety net, if you will. It's the reason people can exchange in this intense, risky, and very vulnerable and erotic play and still feel safe. So when someone uses that very safeguard as a weapon, it creates a unique kind of betrayal trauma. You're left questioning not just the person who hurt you, but the entire framework you used to decide who was safe and what was okay. Now, psychologically, this often shows up in what we call attachment injury. An attachment injury isn't just about romantic love, it's about trust. It's the moment where a person you believe would protect you either harmed you or allowed harm to happen to you. And in the lifestyle, that can be amplified because the roles they played was one of deliberate care and control. They were supposed to be the one holding the container for your experience, not shattering it. And I've seen this lead to several common responses. One of the most frequent is hypervigilance. If you want to play again, you don't fully relax. Your body starts to stay alert. You're very tense. You notice every shift in tone, every movement, every small exchange in your partner's breathing or in others. And instead of sinking into a scene, you're scanning completely for danger. So you're no longer really present, and nor do you have the capacity to even play. Another response here is disassociation during play. You might go through the motions, but mentally you are completely checked out. Your body's participating, but your mind has completely disconnected. Now, this can happen subtly or even with someone you trust now, because your nervous system is reacting to the reminder of what happened before. Then there's the loss of interest in kink altogether. Now, for some people, it feels safer just to step away entirely than to risk getting hurt again. And this can come with a layer of shame, wondering why you can't just get over it, quote unquote, or why you still miss the very play that caused the harm. That shame can be heavy because you might feel conflicted here. The act itself may still arouse or appeal to you, but the association with the person who abused you makes it feel wrong or unsafe. So what's especially painful is that in many cases, the abusive partner didn't just cross a line in the heat of the moment. They did it deliberately, they did it with forethought, or they even ignored your signals when you were most vulnerable. That deliberate disregard is part of what makes the wound so deep for people. It's not an accidental misstep, it's a conscious choice to put their desires over your safety. And that changes how you see both them and yourself in the aftermath of what's happened. So when consent gets exploited, it doesn't just make you wary of one person, it makes you doubt your ability to trust anyone in this space again. It can make you doubt your own judgment, and that's where a lot of people get stuck. Because they're not only recovering from the harm, they are trying to rebuild that internal compass for what safe power exchange and trust really looks and feels like. And this is why reclaiming your kink after abuse can feel so different from other forms of healing. You're not just walking away from a harmful relationship. You're actually deciding if you can re-enter a space that once gave you a lot of joy, a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom, connection, and erotic exploration, and figuring out how to do that without losing yourself in the process. So next, we're going to talk about this messy middle. And this middle part of reclaiming your kink after abuse is the part most people don't talk about, probably because it is messy and it is uncomfortable. This isn't a straight path where you decide just to play again. You take, a few small steps and suddenly everything is just okay. It's not. It's completely uneven. One day you might even feel ready, you're excited to jump back in the scene, and then the next, you might be back in the same place where trust feels foreign and your body is tense before anything's even started. Now, part of this comes down to how trauma lives in the body. Your mind might logically understand that the person you're with now is safe, right? You might believe them when they tell you they'll respect your limits. But here's the kicker. Your nervous system doesn't take that instruction that easily. It reacts to patterns and signals it's learned to associate with danger, even if those signals are small or subtle to you. This is why you might be laughing one moment and suddenly find yourself freezing the next. Your body picked up on something before your conscious mind has caught it. And this is often why when I'm working with people, there are times I will tell them I am speaking directly to your nervous system, especially those who may have trust issues with men, because I am trying to reassure the nervous system that it's going to be okay, that it's going to be listened to and we can understand. And this allows people to regain control of this, and start to listen to the signals they're receiving. Now, in this context, right, we need to understand that triggers can be unpredictable. It's not always the obvious things like a specific implement or the type of restraint that's going to set somebody off. It could be a word that was once used in the harmful scene. It could be a tone of voice. It could be some music you had playing, a position that you were put in before when you were harmed, right? Even kindness can feel suspicious. If someone is being unusually attentive, you might catch yourself wondering if they're genuine or they're just setting you up. This is where the push-pull becomes so strong, because part of you still wants to play, to connect to people, to feel the parts of your erotic self that kink used to bring. But the other part of you is guarding that door. It's holding it closed because now vulnerability feels way too risky. And those parts of you that don't just take turns politely, they are in a constant fight with each other in real time. You can find yourself leaning in and pulling away with the same breath. And from the psychological side, this is your attachment system and your threat response system in complete negotiation. Your attachment system is wired to seek that closeness and connection to somebody else. But your threat system, that's wired to protect you from harm. And after abuse, those systems get tangled up and go head to head. Closeness no longer feels purely safe, and safety can feel strangely distant or unreal. And that's why you might hesitate in the moments where you used to relax or even enjoy yourself. This messy middle is also where you're learning what your current capacity really is. And it's tempting to think that you can just go back to the same kind of play you did before, but the truth is your thresholds have probably shifted or they're different now, at least for a little while. So you might need shorter scenes or longer check-ins, or to start with a non-sexual power exchange until you feel steadier. None of this for you is a failure. And it's your system relearning how to distinguish between risk and danger. And I want to emphasize a point. This doesn't just, by the way, sit for submissives. This can go for dominance. This can happen in either direction because we are talking about relationships, right? And abuse does happen the other direction, right? So I want to make that distinction clear because I know one of the comments was this is just, prevalent or only happens to submissives or bottoms. No, it does not. Harm in kink can go the other direction, right? And it may not sound like it does happen, but we don't probably hear as much about it. Nevertheless, it is important to remember here that the messy middle part isn't a punishment for what happened to you. It's your body's way of protecting you until you've had enough evidence so you feel safe again. And every time you pause, every time you use that your safe word, every time you speak up about what you need, you're giving yourself that evidence. Over time, those moments are going to add up. This stage can be really frustrating because the process is rarely linear for anyone. You might have a great scene and then find yourself unexpectedly crying or shutting down in the next one. That doesn't mean you're back at the beginning. It just means the healing is in progress. And that's okay. And you've got to take your time with it. And you've got to listen to yourself. What matters is that you keep honoring where you are instead of forcing yourself to move faster just because you think you should be over it by now, right? The messy middle is where patience matters the most. Not just patience from your partner, but patience with yourself. This isn't about proving anything, right? You can still do what you did before. It's about creating something safer and stronger and more aligned with who you are now. So let's talk about these small steps towards safety and choice, because I think this is a really big moment here. Because when you're in that messy middle, the way forward isn't to push yourself back into the deep end. It's to take small, deliberate steps that build safety and choice one layer at a time. And I mean deliberate. This isn't about performing strength or trying to prove to anyone that you're over what happened. It's about giving yourself enough space to trust the ground you're underneath your feet again. So one of the best tools I've seen for this is negotiating micro scenes instead of full play sessions. So a micro scene is short. It's focused, it's definitely limited in its scope. Maybe it's just a few minutes of impact play with a single implement, or it's practicing a specific form of restraint without layering in anything sexual. The goal is to create a space where you can notice how your body responds without the pressure of sustaining an entire scene. So you're not committing to the whole meal, you're just tasting a bite. And another approach here is start with a non-sexual power exchange. That might mean more rituals or protocols or service-based activities that let you explore the dynamics without that sexual or intense physical contact that may reignite your system. For some people, this creates a sense of connection and control that's easier to process emotionally. And it keeps you engaged in the power exchange while reducing the sensory and psychological load. And I really can't say this part enough. Use safe words liberally and without apology. If you're testing your capacity, you're going to hit some hard limits, especially the ones you didn't expect. Calling a safe word isn't a failure. It's not a signal that you're broken. It's just evidence that you're listening to yourself. And every time you use it, you're reinforcing that voice of yours that matters and that your boundaries are important and they need to hold. That's exactly the kind of muscle you're going to want to strengthen during your re-entry, right? It gives evidence back to yourself that you're more in control. Choosing partners in the stage matters more than ever. So you want to look for someone who's going to be emotionally steady, not just in their skill or their experience, quote unquote, but someone that can be technically brilliant and still, lack the emotional capacity to hold its space for your healing, right? That's not the mix you want to be in. And what do I mean by that? You don't want somebody who knows how to be a great masochist, but they can't hold any space for you after your session is over. You want somebody, right, at this moment, at this junction when you're coming back, you want somebody who can slow things down when you need to, who don't take your limits like they're some personal attack, and who understand that your comfort isn't a negotiable thing. This is about character, not a resume. And if you're not sure about someone, watch how they respond to small stuff. If you mention a limit, do they acknowledge it and move on, or do they try to negotiate it away? When you say, hey, I'm not sure about that, do they make space for you, or do they to decide, in your own time, or do they keep circling back to it? Early behaviors are the best predictors of how they'll handle more intense play. And finally, the other tool I recommend here strongly is the self-check-in before, during, and even after a scene, or even during the negotiation stage. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to or because I feel I should? The second part is where a lot of people trip up, especially after abuse. There can be pressure sometimes internally and sometimes externally to get back to normal or to meet somebody else's expectations. But if the answer isn't an unambiguous I want to, you have permission to slow down or completely stop, right? This is why I love capacity. Your emotional, physical, and mental health are all those things in this self-check-in aren't there. Don't play. You're not ready, and it's not a failure. Taking small steps doesn't mean you'll stay in the stage forever. It just means you're giving yourself the time to relearn what feels safe. And safe is the launch pad for everything we do in the lifestyle. The more evidence your body and your mind have that you can stop when you need to, or choose what you want to, and trust who you're with, the easier it's going to become to move into deeper play without carrying the same weight, fear, or hesitation you had before. And these small steps aren't just the way back in. They're a way to build something stronger than you had before, because now it's built on choice, just habit or hope. And that's why even recently I've been talking about personal agency within our kink relationships. Just because we're a dom or a submissive, that doesn't mean we don't have a choice. We're not our roles. It's not who we are. Those are something we do. So this is also about taking and reclaiming and holding agency for yourself. So let's talk about rebuilding without losing yourself for a minute. Now, rebuilding after abuse isn't just about finding your way back into the play. It's about holding on to the parts of yourself you still want to feel and explore without letting them get buried under performance or obligation. And this can be tricky, because for many people in the lifestyle, they have a strong drive to please or meet expectations or to fulfill a role. So when you've been hurt, that drive can get tangled with fear. And before you know it, you're back in the same patterns. You're doing this, things for somebody else's comfort instead of your own desire. And you're not listening to yourself. And this becomes the ramp up for a shutdown. And again, here, psychologically, this is about avoiding what's called self-abandonment, the act of ignoring or overriding your own needs or your own limits or feelings in order to keep somebody else happy. We often call this people-pleasing. So in the lifestyle, self-abandonment can be subtle, and it might look like agreeing to a scene you're not really sure about because you don't want to disappoint your partner, or pushing past the limit because you used to enjoy that activity and now you feel like you just should again by now, right? But the danger in that is in trying to preserve the connection, you are eroding your own sense of safety and agency. So you have to listen to yourself. One of the ways to avoid this is to consciously balance caution with curiosity. Caution tells you, I'm going to protect myself. Curiosity is telling you, I wonder what this might feel like now. So when you hold both, you create a space where you can imagine again without committing before you're ready to. Maybe talk through your fantasy with your partner, but don't act on it just yet. Maybe watch a type of play from the sidelines. Go to a dungeon, watch some scenes being performed, demonstrations going on, just to see the emotions it may bring up. Because that's still progress. You're still showing up. Even if it doesn't look like full participation yet, you're still getting there. And it's also important to understand that desire after abuse can be complicated. The part of you that still wants to play is valid, even if the activities you were drawn to are the same ones that were used to harm you. This doesn't mean you're broken or you're damaged. From a trauma perspective, it's normal for erotic templates to stay intact even after harm. What changes is your relationship to safety and trust. So by separating the act from the person who harmed you, you can start to reclaim it on your own terms. And that's the most important part here. And here's where permission comes in. Permission to stop, to slow down, to change even the direction without shame. Because in a healthy dynamic, this slowdown period shouldn't be non-negotiable. But you also have to give yourself the same internal permission. If you're in a scene and realize you're not feeling right, ending it isn't a setback, right? We do end scenes on occasion. It's an act of self-respect. If you planned a scene and decide at the last minute not to go through with it, you're not wasting anybody's time. You're honoring your capacity in that moment. And this stage of rebuilding is not about, just getting through things. It's about trust in yourself, trust in your ability to read your own signals, and eventually trust in your partners that you've chosen. That trust isn't built in one big leap. It's built in dozens of small decisions where you choose yourself, and then when you noticed what felt right and what didn't, and where you acted in alignment with that awareness. The goal isn't just to get back, right, to kink that you had before, because that kink is now going to be different. The goal is to create a version of kink that works for who you are now. A version where you can feel play and explore without having to hand over parts of yourself then to do it. That's just not reclaiming, just diving straight in. That's not just about reclaiming your kink. That's reclaiming yourself. So as I want to start winding this down here a little bit, I want to leave you with something to start thinking about after you listen to this and move forward. And this is a really important question that I want you to ask if this has happened to you. If I rebuilt my kink entirely on my own terms, what would I keep and what would I leave behind? Now, this isn't something to answer in a rush, because it's not about making a new checklist of kinks you do and you don't want, do and don't want. It's about looking at the shape of your experience now, your boundaries, your needs, the way you want to feel, and then asking yourself what belongs in the version of kink that feels safe and empowering and alive for you. Because sometimes what looks obvious is not always obvious. It's the dynamic that still lights you up, or the play that still feels like home. But other times you have to leave, what you leave behind is harder to admit for yourself, maybe even to your partner. Maybe it's an activity you used to enjoy, but now it just feels tied to an old version of you or to a partner who crossed that line. So letting go of those things isn't about weakness. It's about the space to make up for something new and better to grow into. So reclaiming kink here after harm is the long game. And I'm sorry if you've gone through this. It is a long game, because you won't always feel like you're making progress, and you won't always recognize the process you've made until you look back. But every small choice that you make becomes truly yours. And every time you say yes because you want to, and a no because you mean it, that's the part that you're beginning to rebuild? So sit with that question. Let it shape how you negotiate, how you play, how you decide who gets the privilege of your trust. And remember, you're not just trying to return to something you've had, you're creating something that's entirely yours this time. If this has unfortunately happened to you, or you've experienced this and you need to speak with somebody, first look to there is the kink aware professionals. There are kinky counselors, therapists, and social workers there. So reach out to somebody, right? You can look to Psychology Today, look to therapists in your area, or you know what? You can feel free to reach out to me and we can at least have a small conversation. I don't do consults anymore, right? But talk to somebody. You don't have to sit and process and have all the answers by yourself trying to figure this out, right? Talk to your friends or talk to your family, right? But most of all, listen to yourself. I have a new segment I'm going to do, although I kind of hesitated on when I was going to do it, but no episode I really do is typically easy, so I'm just going to do it. I have, as of lately, received, I don't know what it is, a lot of just hatred is probably the best way for the work that I do, or how I show up for people, or the things that I write, or the things that I say. I've kind of had my fill. And let me be honest with you, it does sit with me. Like I told it, because if most of you know, or if you follow me on social media, if you make a comment, for the most part, I respond to everybody. And I get the question a lot from either my friends or my colleagues, why do I do that? I do that because I want you to know, if you wrote and you might have a statement or might even have this question, it feels good if you get a response. So I'm trying to acknowledge that, even if it's just a thank you or you're welcome. I want you to know I've read your comment. However, there are some other people in this world that have other things to say. So we are going to start getting into that. This new segment is called You're Famous Now. You know, because the longer you do this type of work, the work that I'm doing, the more visible you become in the public persona, the more you turn into a mirror for other people's projections. And some folks really don't like what they see looking back at them. And they take cheap shots, they nitpick on everything, they tear you down because it's easier than engaging with what you actually said. So today, this is going to be the opening salvo of some of the things that I either get emailed to me or get commented on by the people I end up blocking. So I'm going to be paraphrasing this, and I'm because oftentimes I can't really read their screen names, and I'm not going to out them like that, like some other people have tried to do to me. But I've created some new ones for them, so that way it will help you out. So from the Hemorrhoid King of Sacramento, I received, I tried listening, but wow, you sound like you love hearing yourself talk more than you love the topic. I guess they were referring to my podcast, not really sure. From Tiff Takes No Tips. I read your stuff sometimes, but honestly, you ramble way too much. Just say the same thing and then you move on because you think you're smarter than everybody. Well, no, not really. I'm just trying to help people understand and explore their feelings, Tiff, but whatever. Edgelord of Nowhere. Man, your posts are exhausting. You act like every thought you have is groundbreaking. Sorry, I couldn't really read his words. And then there's a bunch of curse words and telling me to go F myself. I'm not going to read all that. And my favorite one here, Miss Subtlety is not my strong suit. Half the time I can't even figure out what your point is. Do you even edit before you hit your posts? Actually, I edit my stuff pretty methodically. Sometimes I'll sit on a writing for a couple of hours before I post it. That's why sometimes I don't post till late at night or early in the morning, right? But, hey. Now, these aren't like they're full-blown. I'm paraphrasing what a lot of these people say, because a lot of times they just add in colorful words and call me a bunch of names. They attack me. They attack my privacy. And again, I'm not going to go into why, because we all have the right to privacy. Just because I'm doing this doesn't mean you get a right to my entire life. It's never going to happen, right? I choose to put out there what I want to. If that's a problem, or if you want to know more about me because you just believe you're owed that, probably not going to be the person to keep listening to, right? Now, I could tell you that none of these types of comments don't get under my skin, but that wouldn't be the truth. The truth is, when you speak openly, like I do, about really difficult things, you're going to hit some people's nerves. And sometimes those nerves fight back with whatever they think will stick. Their tone, their style, personality, anything but actual response to what I'm actually commenting or talking about. And that's okay. Sometimes I don't even respond back to certain people because they're just in a ramble. But if you attack me or try to derail what I'm saying, you know what? It's well within my right to remove it, because I don't want to engage with it, and it's exhausting for me to look at it. But instead of me taking all these attacks, a way to offload for me, I'm going to start sharing this stuff with you all, right? But if getting these comments means the work is still hitting there, if the people are still listening, if it's helping you, and I'm glad it does, and I get so many comments and questions and emails saying thank you, I take them, and I appreciate that, because I'd rather have a hard conversation and deal with the static than stay silent to keep other people who are uncomfortable comfortable, because that's never going to happen. And if you followed me for these past 6 years, on social media, I don't bend a knee. If I don't apologize for what I say what I say. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, that's on you. There is no canceling me because, frankly, you're offended. Never going to happen. Those days are over. I've never subscribed to them, and it's never going to happen. But every week, I am going to be bringing more and more of these wonderful, colorful comments. I'm going to edit their screen names. I'm going to give you some really fun ones, like the Hemorrhoid King. That was just I couldn't actually read his screen name, but it had a whole bunch of this type of stuff in there, and I'm like, awesome. That's what I'm going to call him. So yeah, for some other things real quickly, we're going to get into some other stuff. Coming up, I have decided for a long time I wanted to stay away from it because I think it's more, it's emotional. Politics and kink. And I really haven't dove into it. And even race play in kink. I haven't gotten into that. But the more I looked at it, it's not out of avoidance. It's more because it's an uncomfortable conversation. But we are talking about human emotion and human experience. So I am going to be opening up these conversations at some point, either before this year ends or into the new year. If this is something you feel strongly about and you'd like to talk about it on the show, there will be some rules, but I'm going to be open to it. Yes, I'm still working to get Hi There Catsuit on here. It's more about me. And Red Leather, again, this is more about me, right? My scheduling. Don't forget, don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I am working on the new worksheet. I'm going to try to release it. Apparently, I think I've got like 10 up there, so you all should be pretty happy with that, because all that stuff is free, right? I do have a book out there. It's not the greatest literary work on BDSM ever created. It's a little repetitive. Tangled Desires, the exploration of psychology and kink. If you want it, go get it, right? But be forewarned, I'm telling you, I do repeat myself, and it's a little dry. I got 90 citations in there, I think. I believe 90. I don't know, probably at least more than 50. But, sometimes we write from what we think is going to be helpful, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But I've gotten really, some really good feedback, and I appreciate all of you. Croatia, Sweden, I hear you. I get you. Belgium, Argentina, Ecuador, most recently. Thank you. Right? I wish I could spend time just acknowledging all of your comments. Maybe I'll do an AMA live one of these days. Might be helpful. So, let me know what you thought about today's show. Right? I know this is going to hit a nerve, but this is a serious topic, and we need to discuss it. And it's hard because I work with a lot of people dealing with it. And I know a lot of other great therapists out there that work with people reclaiming themselves after abuse inside of relationships, especially, kinky relationships, right? Because it's not easy. We lose a part of ourselves. That agency gets stripped away, right? Just remember there is a way back, and you're not alone. Let me know what you think about today's comments. Drop some, drop your stories, drop your thoughts in the comment sections below. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay kinky.